If you have Bibles, we'll be in Genesis chapter 3 this morning. And we have been building with most series that I do. You can come to one and be like, all right, they're kind of stand apart but connected. But this series especially has been very intentional on, like, we have different chapters, like chapter 1, chapter 2. They're building on top of each other. And so we've been building to today, but really we're building toward the next 2 weeks. And so you ever watch a TV show or a movie like the Avengers, like the last Avenger movies, and you're like, they didn't finish the movie. It's like not done. We don't know how it's going to end. That's kind of like the message this morning. It's always nice to kind of wrap it up and be like, oh, walk out, and there's like resolution. That's the word, resolution. We're not resolving today. We're probably going to create more tension in you than resolving. And so beware of that, but also know that next week's the critical piece. That's the resolving piece. Have you ever had a plan for how something was going to work out, and you were excited about how that plan was going to work out, and you had built up the anticipation, like there was a design towards something, and it didn't live up to what it was supposed to be? Vacations are a lot like that sometimes. My wife and I, when we were newly married, we had our son. He was still our only one kid at the time in the car seat. And you ever do one of those things where you have to do a wedding anyway, and it's in a different state? So you're like, we're going there anyway. Why don't we just go on vacation there? And so that's what we decided to do. And at that point, I didn't get a lot of vacation time. And so we're like, this is our vacation. And so you start getting excited about it. We're going to be at a lake, and we're going to kind of sit down, relax, spend some time together. And so we get in our car, ready to go drive to Michigan. I hate the driving in itself, but we're all packed in. We got the 100 pieces of kid stuff in the back of the trunk, and we have our 2 pieces of small luggage someplace. And we get in the car, and we're driving the turnpike. I don't know which part of the turnpike we were on. We were spending way too much money trying to get through the toll booths, and we pull off to a rest stop. And we relax for a few minutes, do what we need to do. We get back on, and all of a sudden, the car is running, but it's not running right. You ever have those experiences? It's like weakening. It's like going. It's like full strength, and it's like, and it's like something's wrong, and so you got to figure out. Okay, we're going on vacation, and something's wrong with my vehicle. And so we were like, you're on the turnpike. You have only one choice: get off the turnpike. And so we were like, all right, we get off to the booth, and we're like 4 cars back, and you can just tell, it's dying, right? I know it's going to die. And we're talking, we're like, okay, we got this guy get through the toll booth. We'll figure it out after we get through. And it's like, car moves up, and car moves up. And we're like right at the front of the toll booth. We're not to where you pay yet. We're just right blocking it. No one can get by us, and it's dead. Like there's like no turning. There's no move. There's nothing. It's like dead. Like there's no sounds, nothing. And so I get out of the car, go up to the turnpike, the gate guy. I'm like, okay, my car, it's dead. I can't do anything. He's like, will you pay first? I go back to the car, get the ticket, get my money, walk to the toll booth guy, pay, and they said, by the way, my car's broken down. He's like, all right, I can do one thing for you. I will call the tow truck. But you're blocking. So can you get the car out of the way so we can get the tow truck in? So I get out of the car, I get behind the car, and I'm pushing it. Unfortunately, I was not on the farthest right lane. I was in, and so we're pushing, I'm pushing. Gina, I think, is still in the car and trying to just get across. We finally sit there. Tow truck comes, and so it's one of those, they get us on the tow truck, and Gina is like, kind of as a new mother, first child, you know how it is, third child, we don't care what happens, first child, you're like very protective. And she's like, the car seat, we have to put the car seat someplace. We can't, because there's only one seat in the tow truck. There's me, my wife, the tow truck driver, who we don't know, and then there's Eli. And so we get all loaded up. She's like, we got to get there. And I can tell her tension is like rising. And I'm thinking, this is not the way this is designed to go. We get to, they pull, and just so you know how the toll truck, don't break down on one of those roads, because they only take you one place. And the place they took us to was a gas station with a 1-bay garage. And I said, maybe you should take us someplace else. He's like, this is the only place they tell us to take you. You'll have to pay double to have us towed. So basically you get towed to the gas station and then towed from the gas station to wherever you want it to be taken. And so we have this one thing, and it's Sunday. Do you know what Sunday means for a gas station? That has a garage attached to it, means it's not open. So we like look around, we have nothing. So we'll wait till Monday morning, get everything. We look around, there's two hotels. And did I say that we're newly married, young? We have the cheap hotel, the $60 hotel, and we have the $150 hotel. And we're on vacation, and you know how you're less like, I need to save as much money for the vacation as I can, so we're like, we choose the $60 hotel. The last time I ever chose a $60 hotel. We walk in, and I'm not exaggerating very much, but you walk in, and I think we said to each other, let's not take off our shoes the rest of the time. We're like, let's sleep on top of the sheets, because it wasn't right. We walk outside, and there's like some band like truck there with like equipment all around, and they're like sitting there, and there's like strange things happening in the hotel parking lot over here. And so I'm like, Gina, I need to go get some food. You lock the door, and if I don't come back, don't come find me, because this is not the place to do that. And so we finally get the car fixed, and you know that it's like the dollar signs are like climbing because you're in a gas station that fixes alternators, and it wasn't cheap. And so we finally get moving. We get to the vacation place, and we find out that we got this small little house for a large family. My whole family was there, and we had to share a room with another couple, which meant that we had to fall asleep before the other couple did, otherwise we'd be up all night with snoring. And so we had all this, and we couldn't talk, and we're like, this is not what we thought this was going to. So we finally, we start going to the lake. We're like, the lake. Relax. We give someone in our family a ride to, like, you ever have a car that has special needs, has some challenges to it? Like there's some things that only you know, like you know it, and so you love it. But this car had a window that would go down easily, but it would only go up, like, you push it and it would only go up like one little half inch at like not even a half inch. It was just a little, it was like, you familiar with those things? I don't know if you guys ever had a car like that. And so we knew, you don't put the window down, you just don't. But the person riding with us saw someone they knew, they pushed the button and went, zzz, and we're like, no, and it was all the way down to the bottom. You can't talk to them because they're talking to somebody else. And so for the rest of the vacation, we're just looking at the forecast, and every time we get in the car, it's like, and then we stop, wait till the next time we get in the car, All I'm saying is, you ever have like expectations of something and then not live up to those expectations? Like you have a design for how it was going to be and it's not there? Let me build this with you. I know we've been here for the last 3 or 4 weeks, but Genesis 1 and 2 has a design. Like God has built something that has a picture of what it's supposed to be like. And I think God has painted that picture in us. Like what God designed for us in Genesis 1 and 2 is in us that we want. Like one, the very first week we talked about God designed us to walk with him. We have a desire to know God. Now we're going to get to the frustration part, but there's something in us. All cultures every culture has a pursuit of a God. There's something in us that wants to. There's something bigger than this than just star. We're more than stardust. We're more than neurons firing. There's something in us. Whether some acknowledge it, maybe and some don't. So some in here may be like, I don't know if I believe that, but I believe that God put in us a desire to know him. Because listen, even the term atheism is a reaction against God. Does that even make sense? Does that make sense to you? Like they are choosing to define themselves by their not belief. If they didn't, you're defining yourself by your fight against a God rather than defining yourself by something else. And so anyway, you can do with that what you want. Number 2, so God's like, okay, I put the desire for him in us. The second week, even though it got snowed out, is really about how God designed our world to function. Like it's supposed to be this. If you read it, and I hope you do sometimes, Genesis 1, you see the sensory place. Like think of Disney World, and think of God creating a Disney World experience for us. Like you read it and you're like, there's these tastes that are unbelievably just delicious. Like the fruit of the trees were perfect. There was like smells. Like you could if you read it, there's like these smells of the garden. There's these like views and pictures of the garden. There's like mention of gold and other emeralds and this It's a view of a beautiful place that was created for us. Now listen, we get tastes of it. You have a place. I'm guessing, and maybe I could be wrong, but I'm guessing you have a place where you're like, this is good. You're just at peace. Maybe it's at the beach. You finally get to vacation. All right, you finally get there after all the chaos of packing and everything. You finally get there. You sit on the sand. You have the toes in the sand or in the water, and you have the sun shining down. And you have the smell. You familiar with the smell of the beach, the ocean? There's a smell coming in, and there's a sound of the waves. Can you feel it yet? And you just feel at peace. Like this is the way this is good. But maybe some of you are not. You hate to feel the sand like everywhere, but you're more of the mountaintop thing. Like you get to the top of the mountaintop, yes, it was a journey getting there, but you're looking over top of the valley and like, this is good. There's something right here. Or maybe you're just like in the woods, like you just sit in a deer stand, give me some sounds of nature, some birds chirping, some squirrels going by, my gunfire every once in a while, and I'm at peace. So we have this desire for things to function well in creation. Like I love to go outside and see the sunset when it's like absolutely knocked dead out. Like it's just beautiful, right? The stars in the sky, like when it's like a nice summer day and it's just clear and you can see it like a ton of there's something in us that's like, this is good. We were also created for relationship, right? It's not good for man to be alone. There's something good. There's something in us that wants to be in relationship. We're seeking friendships. We're seeking connection. And God created in us that desired to not be alone, to be with people, to know people. And God also designed us to have purpose, right? There's something in us that wants to achieve something with our life. Are you following me? This is all review. This is all the last 4 weeks, but I want to make sure you understand where we're going. All right, like we were designed that work is supposed to be like, yes, I'm going after, I'm fighting for something. We want to fight for something. We want to go after something. We want to create something. Now we're getting to today. But we're all designed for that. And I think whether you believe in God or not, I think for most of those things you can say yes, 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 yes. We have that hunger inside of us. But there's this other side of the puzzle that says we are very frustrated in all those areas. Like, we look around at our world and like, what is wrong with our world? It's in chaos. What's wrong with our community? What's wrong with them, whoever them are? I'm pointing over here. It's not you guys. Well, them, all right? What's wrong with them? What's going on? There's something's not functioning right. What's wrong with us? You ever have that question? What's wrong with me? What I do, I don't get me. I should be better than this. I should be doing better. Maybe here's the questions for you. So we have these yearnings, but something's not right, and maybe you felt one of these things. Maybe, have you ever had a broken friendship that you're just like so hurt by, betrayed? There's a frustration in you over that broken friendship. For some of you, you had a picture of what marriage was supposed to be. Happily ever after. That's what Disney said, and Disney makes lots of money, so they have to be right. But you're finding that happily ever after is not sometimes so happily. Sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes it's a fight. Maybe you've been through a divorce and you know how painful that is, and you're like, this is not the way it's designed to be. This is not the way marriage should be designed to be. That's not how friendships are designed to be. You ever read the news? A few years ago, the Robin Williams committed suicide type thing. And you're like, how can a guy who is so funny, who enters a room and you're just like, he's full of life, be at the point of taking his own life? Isn't there something in us that when we hear that or hear of someone we know that took their life, like you're like, this is not right. This is not right. There's something wrong with this. How about you ever know someone or know a family member, a friend who has had someone in their family overdose? You had a picture of what their life is going to be, and they got trapped and addicted to something, and their life ended. And you're like, there should be some frustration at that. There should be some anger at that. Loneliness. You ever get the point of like, I hate being. This is not the way, I'm just driven away. This is frustrating that I feel so alone. How about someone who's been emotionally, physically, sexually abused? And you're like, this is not right. There's frustrating. You're angry. The sex slavery. Anybody get frustrated? Like, how can anyone in their right mind take a young girl and sell her for sex? What is wrong with our world? Racism? You look around and you're like, how can people hate another person just because of what race they are or what sex they are? Are you following me this morning? Isn't there some frustration in any of these things? Maybe it's even in me. You're like, I don't know how I can be so selfish sometimes. How I can be I feel so broken sometimes. I feel so like I don't feel right. And we come to the question. This is the question this morning. We come to church on a Sunday morning, and we have this picture painted of happily ever after, how we're supposed to function, and then we get to the real world of how frustrated we are with whatever pieces of our life that are, and we're like, they don't add up. Here's some questions that people ask. If God loved me, why does he allow us to be so frustrated? If God's powerful, why does he fix it? If God. And I want to tell you that as we look at this worldview of how we see this frustration playing out, I think it's explained right here in Genesis chapter 3. There's a reason why there's frustration. There's a reason why we get so angry at being alone. There's a reason why our world's breaking down, and there's hurricanes and there's droughts, and we're like, why would God allow those things? There's reasons why it's happening. If you trace the dominoes back, there's a domino that has virally, do you know what a virus is? That has virally spread into every area of our life and every area of this world. That's the reason why everything's breaking down. Now, I want to pause for a second, because I think we have to look at what other views can you take besides what we're going to look at today that explain why we believe that there's something better and why we're not getting it. All right, listen. If you believe in atheism, if you believe that there is no God, the truth of the matter is your frustration it doesn't matter. Because all life is a firing of neurons. All life is your stardust. You are either too weak to handle it and you need to die off and the strongest need to survive, or it doesn't matter. Listen to me. There is no explanation, and you can feel free to push back on me. Email me and say, here's an explanation. I don't know of an explanation in atheism that explains why we believe that we deserve better and a path to get there, or why there's any of it. Or maybe there's other ways that you can look at it, like, all right, we just need to try harder. Society just needs to try harder. If people would just try harder, we could get better. Let me just tell you something. There's thousands of years of evidence that trying harder doesn't work. Maybe if we just educate more. Okay, listen to me. I know some of you are educators. Don't get frustrated with me when I say this. I think education is very important and it's very critical, but it cannot solve the frustration of what's wrong with our world. Let me tell you, we could go to school 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 55 years, and the issue of frustration of where things aren't functioning well will still be there. Maybe, listen, this is the one. I know this is the one you all buy in. If we could, the government, we just need to trust our government. That was supposed to be a joke. That was supposed to be sarcastic. All right, listen, like if we just had the right president, if we just had the right Congress, if we just had the right everything would fix. Let me just tell you something again. Over thousands of years, there's been lots of different kings and leaders and presidents, and none of them have taken care of all the frustration in our world, or even part of it. Let me just get to Genesis 3. This is the worldview. This is what Moses is saying. As you're looking at the rest of Scripture and the rest of the story of history, this is why you're so frustrated. This is why God has put on us the picture of something better. This is why we I can't believe this. I can't believe this. This is why. Genesis 3, 1 through 11. It's going to sound strange for some of you who haven't heard this story, so I'll walk through it a little with you. This is what it says. Now the serpent
was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat from the trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die." "You will not certainly die," the serpent said to the woman, "for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good from evil." When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food, was pleasing to the eye, was desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some of it and ate it. She also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized that they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made covering for themselves. This singular moment pivoted our world into chaos. And you're like, what? A stinking fruit? One piece of fruit has caused all this? I mean, it's not about the fruit. Let me explain the story a little bit. So you're like, even the serpent, there's snakes talking. There's lots of explanations that we're not going to go deep into it, but it's very good possibility that when it says serpent, it's really talking about there are angels and there are demons. There's a spiritual world. And it very well could be that there is one of the spiritual world, one of the people that were walking in the garden. It's like God walking in the garden. There was other angelic beings probably walking in the garden. That one of those came to Eve and said, "Listen, that fruit over there that's looking pretty good." Because this is what God, listen to why God put there's like hundreds of thousands of trees, all good for food. And God says, "Listen, I want to give people choice." Now, my wife and I got married years ago, and what I did, because I wanted her to choose me, is I got down on one knee and I said, "Gina, will you marry me?" She had a choice of whether to love me or not, right? She had a choice to step in or step away. That's exactly what God gave each of us and gave Adam and Eve the choice. He says, "Listen, I love you enough. You are a free will being. I put the image of God in you, and one of those images is that you can choose. You can choose to be in relationship with me, and you can choose not to be in relationship with me. And the biggest part of the fruit is making that choice." Does that make sense? So Eve had all sorts of choices. She said, I've given you freedom. Listen, she was designed for freedom, not for slavery. She was designed to eat all of it, any of it. Go taste any of it. Enjoy yourself. Delight. That's what Eden means, delight. Have fun. Go make babies. Do what you want to do. This is a perfect environment. He said, one thing I don't want you to do, one choice I don't want you to make, because I need to give you choice. I'm going to create a tree, and if you choose that tree, what you're really choosing is you don't want the relationship with God, and you want to be your own God. So listen, the function of Eden was like there was a king of kings who ruled. And because he was a perfect king, it was like perfectly functioning. Once Adam and Eve said, "You're no longer God, you're no longer king, I'm going to take the fruit," guess what happened? You have a new king on display, at least in Adam and Eve's lives, and all of a sudden that choice spirals into chaos and anarchy. You follow me? And so what happens is that virus with Adam and Eve has been passed down from generation to generation to generation. And in us, we have this thing called sin, this propensity, this desire to put God in a different spot and us do what we want to do. And so what happened is when Adam and Eve took the fruit and the virus entered the world, all of a sudden creation has been affected by sin. And now there are earthquakes and hurricanes. Romans 8 says that the earth is yearning for it to be redeemed, yearning to be brought back. In fact, if you read Revelation 20 and 21, there's a new heaven and earth coming. It's almost like a rebirth of the world. It's going to function again like it was supposed to. And then he's like, I want you to know that relationships in this new kingdom, that he came to redeem relationships. Philippians and Ephesians talk about having two people, the Gentiles and the Jews, but all walks of life coming together in one body, in one family. And although there's still tension in that because we're still living in the virus, there is a time coming in the new heaven and new earth when life will be we will no longer have to hide. We'll know each other authentically. There'll be no more like rough edges that we have to worry about. It'll be like all that frustration will come to an end. in our soul. Do you understand that when that sin entered the world, when we choose to rebel and put ourselves on the throne, there's something that was broken inside of us. We are broken. I don't know if you're going to admit this or not. You may not want to admit it, but there are things in you that are broken. Your motives are not right. Even if you do the right thing, our motives are like so off sometimes. And this is what Paul says. Now listen, this is Paul, who in the New Testament wrote most of the New Testament. He is like the smartest guy that we would know. He is someone that we would admire. He's like, man, he's super spiritual. This is what he says in Romans 7. I know what I want to do, but I don't do it. What I want to do, I don't do, and what I don't want to do, I do. Therefore, I'm doing what I don't want to do. I'm broken. And that's Paul talking. He's like, listen, this law is at work in me, that there's a sin, that there's just a brokenness inside. There's a brokenness of our soul. There are wounds in there. There's like pus. You know what pus is, right? I don't even like that word. I hate medical stuff. But there's like this, and I know I'm painting the bad picture this morning, but you can't understand how great his grace is and the lengths that he has gone to rescue us without understanding how much frustration is traced back to the sin that has entered our lives. And then at the baseline, at the very center of what happened and what's wrong with us and what's wrong with our frustration is God is distant. God is veiled. Isn't that what it feels like sometimes? You pray a prayer and you just feel like he's veiled. You know what veiled means, right? It's like a bride has a veil over. Like there's a curtain in between. There's a wall. We feel like there's a wall between us and God. Like there's just birds chirping sometimes when you're praying. Why is that? It's because God is perfect. God is like holy. He is otherly, and he cannot have this virus near him or in him, but he is going to eradicate the virus. He's going to eradicate the sin. He's going to take care of it next week. Well, he did it a long time ago, but we're going to talk about it next week. Like there is a restoration of our relationship. We were distant from God. We were alienated. Listen, this is what Tim Keller says, that we have faced alienation in our relationship. We're alienated from God, and we're even alienated from ourselves when this happened in our world. And so stepping back, looking at what the storyline is, does that fit? That's what worldview is. It's like looking at our world and saying, all right, let me take the world and let me see if this truth, if I place it on top of it, fits. Does it fit? I'm telling you, not only do I believe it fits, but I think the rest of the Bible is playing that out. The rest, listen, the Bible never paints David as perfect, never paints Moses as perfect, never paints anyone as perfect. They do portray them as broken people. From Genesis chapter 4 on is the fall, the chaos of what sin, like it's story after story of like crazy stuff happening. Chapter 4, the very next chapter, guess what happened? Well, a few verses later, Adam and Eve are blaming each other. That wife, that husband. Chapter 4, you have these brothers hanging out together, and Cain kills Abel. Right? The next couple chapters are about how crazy the world got. And it was so like murder, and there was no rules, and it just got out of control. And God's like, his heart's like, man, he was sad that he even created it all. And then he gets to like sexual problems with things in Genesis, and even David and Bathsheba. And then do you understand the rest of the story? Then he chooses this nation Israel. Like, all right, we're gonna start over. God had a way of restarting, right? He's like, he almost like, okay, this is broken, and I know you're frustrated. Even though he knows what's going to happen next, but I think it's for our benefit of what happens, because we were like, this is how I would solve this. And so this is what God does. And he's like, that didn't work either, by the way. You know what I mean? Like, so he starts over with a whole new people, then he starts over with a whole new nation, Israel. And the rest of the story is Israel and their rebellion against God. Like, they're constantly running. They're like, God, look, this is what we say. God, if you gave me everything I ever wanted, I'd follow you. Let me tell you something. Israel had the promised land flowing with milk and honey. And he said, I'll take care of you all the days of your life. He says, this is the promises. Read, I think it's Deuteronomy, the covenant he made with them. If you follow me, this is the list that I will bless you. Guess what they did? They still ran from him. They wanted his blessing, but they didn't want him. And then they're off into captivity, and he's like, hey, I just want you to come back to me. I want you to come back to me. I want you to come back to me. And they're like, yeah, but I don't. Blah, 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 blah. And then comes Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Then comes Jesus. A whole new path to restoration. Listen to me. Religion doesn't solve the problems of sin. And you're like, well, I'm in a church. That's religion. Listen, religion is trying to make yourself more holy. If you come to church, you'll solve the problem. If you go to Sunday school, you'll solve the problem. Religion, according to the Bible, does not solve the problem. Trying harder does not solve the problem. Listen to me. The other thing, whatever's next, this is what some people believe, man, if only I could have, and fill in the blank. If I could only get a new, fill in the blank. If I could only get to blank. Let me just say, I've seen people get to the next thing and they just want the next thing. Does that make sense? Like, man, if I could only, I'd be happy then. I wouldn't be so frustrated then. I'd have everything clicking then. And it didn't solve it. Listen, if you go to Barnes & Noble, there are like hundreds, thousands of self-help books. You're like, man, if I could just get self-help, if I could just read the right book, it's going to change my life. It changes the person who wrote the book's life because they get more money, but I'm not sure it's going to change your life. There is one way. According to the Bible's worldview, there is only one solution to this virus and this frustration that's playing out in your life. There is nothing else. There is no other magical wand that could be waved to solve it. There is one thing, and this is where the cliffhanger comes, next week. And if I could, I would share with you now. But I'm telling you, there is nothing more restorative. Nothing like the answer that we're given next week begins to restore our soul. Our soul. Like we start feeling like we don't have shame anymore. It removes our shame. It removes our past sins. It has power to restore relationships, and it has a power to bring two separate entities together. It has the power to give you purpose in your mission. And even now, and some of you are like, I know what you're talking about, I'm still frustrated. Yes, we're still frustrated because haven't eradicated sin completely yet. That's coming well, sometime soon, I hope, but it's coming. It's coming. But you know why he's waiting? Because he's given everyone a chance. He's given you a chance. He's given everyone in our world a chance to have that virus eradicated in them. It's like, I want them to be restored. I want them to be renewed. I want them to experience that frustration. I don't want them to experience frustration. I want them to experience what life, eternal and abundant life is like. That's what he says, I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. Like those four areas, functioning. There's a term in the Old Testament that they use, and this is the term maybe we'll use next week, shalom. It's the Old Testament term. It means peace. What it really means is, this is good. Everything's clicking. And that's why Jewish people, when they greet each other, say shalom to each other. Because they're not saying, it's a greeting, yes, but there's also this hope of, or this thought of, man, I hope you experience shalom, the fullness of life, things functioning well. So I want to encourage you two things. One, come next week, because I'm praying, and I hope that you're praying that next week is transformative for people. And for some of you kind of know what next week's coming. You know in your head. But there's also, I hope it's fresh to you again. Like there's something, a new beauty comes out of it. But number two is, why not use next week as a chance? Because you know people who are frustrated, I'm guessing. There's people around you who are frustrated right now with things that are happening in their life. Maybe next week's a chance to invite them to come and hear the way the Bible says that he's solving this problem, this frustration in us. And so right now, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to pray over next week because we're building toward that, and then we have another week after that, praying that God does some restoration next week. That people get it. Like the veil comes off. You ever see people who are kind of blinded to things? You know, you talk to them and they're like, my prayer is that the veil is removed, and they're like, I get it. There's something better that's being offered to me. I don't have to live in frustration forever. There's something better. So let's pray together. Heavenly Father, I thank you for the truth of this story, that you start Genesis not with like this weird stuff, but about this what's wrong with our world. That we can read the first 3 chapters and see what's good and what's broken, and then that you're a God throughout the rest of the story who's going to redeem, who's going to restore, who's going to lead to freedom, who's going to remove our sin and just eradicate that death of a virus that's in us, that the problems in our world have been dealt with through Jesus. And so I just pray that you'll take some veils off next week, that the message will be clear and powerful, not by the words that is said, but by the Holy Spirit that you give, and this that people will see that there's something better. There is hope, not in what we can do and not what we can do ourselves, but in what you have already done and what you have already paid for us. And so God, just do amazing things in our lives this week. Open our eyes up to who we might want to bring with us. And I pray that next week is a story of restoration and redemption. In Jesus' name, amen.